measure it right, or miss questions. Let's think about measuring square footage. And I'm going to keep this simple because simple is how you pass that test. Square footage is reported in two categories: heated living area and other area. Now, here's something that surprises many students. The North Carolina Real Estate Commission doesn't require you to publish square footage. They don't require you to measure the house. But if you choose to publish square footage, it must be accurate. And this is where people get in trouble. You reasonably cannot rely on tax records, old MLS information, the seller's opinion, an old appraisal, or even a blueprint. None of those are considered reliable sources for square footage. So if you publish square footage, you either need to measure it yourself using guidelines or have a qualified professional measure it. By the way, if you have a professional do it, you're responsible for their number. And that is a test point. Now let's define heated living area, because this is where it gets a little complicated. To count as heated living area, the space must be heated with a permanent heat source, finished comparably to other area, and directly accessible to other living area. If it doesn't meet and check all three of those boxes, it is not heated living area. Air conditioning is not a requirement, but a permanent heat source is. Now let's think about what does not count as living area. It would be considered and counted as other area: garages, porches, decks, carports, unfinished spaces, and unheated spaces. These are all listed as other area, but never as heated living area. And that distinction matters on the state exam. Ceiling height is another test point. The standard ceiling height for a space to count as heated living area is 7 feet minimum. If you have beams or ductwork in the room, the ceiling height 7 feet, it can't go below 6 feet 4 inches. You got to have at least 6 feet 4 inches. If it doesn't meet the requirement, it doesn't count as living area. It counts as other area. Another issue to think about is if you can't walk on it, you can't count it. Think about it this way. You walk into a home and you've got this beautiful open vertical airspace. It's a 2-story foyer. You're looking at the ceiling of the second floor. That's often called a cathedral ceiling, maybe. That space counts on the first floor because you can walk on the first floor. But you have to subtract that space out of the second floor, because when you go upstairs, you can't walk on it. Maybe you can see it, but you can't walk on it. That is a classic exam point. Now let's think about slope ceilings while we're on ceiling height, because this will show up a lot too. A room with a sloped ceiling can count as heated living area if at least 50% of the space is at least 7 feet or higher. And you can include the area in that space all the way down to 5 feet. Below 5 feet, all the way to the corner, does not count as heated living area. You find this issue in bonus rooms, attics, and half stories. And closets count. Remember, don't overthink it. Oh, there's no heat vent. Doesn't matter. It's a closet to the master bedroom. It counts as heated living area. Now, an unfinished utility room does not count. And that distinction is tested on the exam. So let's think about bay windows and dormers, because these can be included in the living area if they meet the height requirement, 7 feet, and you can walk in it. if you can't walk into that bay window, if you can't walk into that dormer and step into that space, it does not count as heated living area. And another really important test point that a lot of people miss is the stairs. And the stairs count on the first and the second floor. So if you have a full 2-story house, you measure the outside and you multiply by 2. But if you must come inside because of that vertical open air space, that cathedral ceiling, and measure the inside, you can add the square footage occupied by the base of the staircase to the second floor. That is a test point. So how do we actually measure? The preferred method is exterior measurements. There are times when that's not possible and you have to come inside and measure. If you have to measure inside, you add 6 inches for exterior walls, and that comes from the guidelines. Don't argue, well, the wall's not 6 inches or the wall's more than 6 inches. Get over it. 6 inches. So where does the responsibility lie for the square footage information? And the answer is, if you publish it, you're responsible for it. And you can be disciplined if it's grossly incorrect. Even if you got the number from the tax records, remember that number is not reliable. The listing agent is held to the highest standard. Now, buyer agents have some responsibility, and generally we can rely on the listing agent unless there is a red flag that leads me to believe something's not quite right. Maybe it just feels tight. Maybe it looks like they've added the garage in as square footage, whatever it is, and you have a duty as a buyer's agent to act. That means you let the buyer know, I think there might be something with the square footage here. We're going to have to look into that if you're serious about this property. And then you need to let the listing agent know you believe there's a problem with the square footage. And if your buyer is seriously interested, then you need to measure that house. And here's some good news. When the listing agent uses best efforts to measure the house, and he follows or she follows guidelines, the North Carolina Real Estate Commission's not unreasonable, and they allow for a reasonable deviation. It can be off a little bit, and that's based on how big it is and how complicated. So perfection is not required. That's good news. But carelessness, laziness, just slothfulness will get you in trouble. So let's wrap this up with why this really matters. Accurate square footage is critical because it impacts value and it impacts comparable sales used for future appraisals. It impacts your buyer's decision. And this is not just about passing the test. This is about protecting your client or that customer. So here's your takeaway. Do not guess. Do not assume. And do not rely on someone else's number. Measure it or verify it. And if you don't know how it was measured, then you don't know if it's accurate. So if this information is helpful to you, stick around, because I'm going to be breaking down more concepts, more critical concepts that will help you untangle questions and pass the North Carolina real estate exam. My name is Kim Stotesbury, and I'm pretty easy to find. You can email me at kim@learntestpass.com. You can check my website at ncbrokerexam.com. And I look forward to helping you pass the test. So if you have a question on a topic and I don't have a video on it, shoot me an email, send me a text, and ask me, because I am happy and I am looking for content to help North Carolina real estate students pass the state exam. So have a great afternoon, and know I'm here for you.